Exactly. Well, as you said, you mentioned some keywords there. You talked about productivity, and then you talked about job creation as well. And I guess those two go hand in hand. What are your views on the productivity aspect of this particular equation? We desperately need to boost our productivity, arguably. Right now, it's a mono-product economy, as you have just alluded to. What are the options there in terms of boosting our productivity?
Well, the options are to start looking at the major drivers of an economy. What are the major drivers of economy? Access to foreign exchange, logistics, infrastructure, human capital development, and of course the resources to build human beings. That's what I mean by human capital development. It's not enough to have more than 200 million people that constitute our population. It's not also enough to have about 60% of that population being younger ones. When there is no revenue, there is no resources to grow them, to nurture them into economic agents. So you can actually have a population of a large number of young people, large number of general people, without them having capacity to be engaged economically. And when you have that kind of situation, it becomes actually a burden, an economic burden. The totality of what constitutes production and productivity, it's one, the infrastructure, and we talk about the nail and hammer infrastructure, roads, ports, whatever you can think of around, hardcore infrastructure, including, of course, power, which is a major thing. It's even up till now, there have been serious uproar, and of course, heel feeling in the manufacturing sector, for instance, over the cost of energy. Yes, and we could also talk of energy in terms of petrol, diesel. These are the energy that drives our households and our industry. And then we are also talking about social infrastructure, access to education, and what kind of education. It's not just even about any form of education. How objectively applicable the kind of education we are going through or passing through that enhances our capacity to be economically engaged and to earn, not just an income, but an income that constitutes what we call a living wage. So these are some of the things that determine your productivity. But unfortunately, up until May 29, 2023, we more or less, trade off all the attributions of infrastructure or productivity, things that help us produce more, and more or less concentrated on subsidy, subsidizing our movement, so to speak, through subsidy for petroleum, especially PMS, more or less PMS, and that was taking virtually all resources of states. So rather than have enough revenue to invest in other aspects of production and productivity, we just concentrated on that. It became a bastion of corruption. When we talk about corruption, it's a major reference point of corruption. It became a major point of constraint for productivity because assets, what we call asset formation, was also constrained. We were not building roads. Money that we were supposed to be building roads, we were funding our subsidy regime. And to even make things worse, we were now also borrowing money to subsidize availability of petroleum, of PMS. And which means that we were actually just burning off, we took loan, subsidized, and then burn off the subsidy as it were, because we were not actually directing the proceeds of that subsidy into productive engagement.
Okay, exactly. So in fact, these, sort of meeting the crunch, and biting the bullet, as they say, that President Tinubu, has initiated. He's taking these very bold decisions because, as you said, to paraphrase you, we were heading for a cul-de-sac, and he saw it. And he took decisive action. In fact, there are those who are saying that was the action not a bit too decisive, because you recall that it was on the very first day of his inauguration that it was almost as if it was part of his inauguration speech. He had said, subsidy is gone. And immediately there was, quote unquote, chaos, in the sense that all the petrol stations, all the outlets immediately jacked up the price. And as we are speaking here, it led to an inflation. I don't know if to say that we're still grappling with that, even as it has come down. Now we have flavors of inflation. There's the general inflation, and there's also what experts are referring to as food inflation as well. One has to be certain, these things, painful as they are just inescapable. And you've also indicated that previous administrations, shied away from it, one reason or the other. But President Tinubu has stuck with it, and it hasn't been the easiest of jobs, because you also do need security. And if we're going to, I mentioned food inflation, if you're going to, do anything appreciable to feeding yourself, well, the criminality that is going on in our food basins is another program to contend with. So, AKA insecurity. I mean, it would have been different if there was peace, if there was a peaceful lie of the ground for this to be going on. But in addition to the challenge that we are facing, we also have to face insecurity. So, I mean, there's a sense in which President Tinubu and his team are doing a real yeoman's job. These are very, very difficult times, but we still are going on. Before you come back on that, let me, I hear that there's a call. Mr. Durosimi in Lekki wants to join the program. So let me bring Mr. Durosimi on. Good morning, Mr. Durosimi. Okay, Mr. Durosimi, if you could just mute the volume of your television set, please.
Good morning, Kuyori.
Good morning, sir.
The question is, how do we get to where we are? We are here where we are because two major decisions taken.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Have you muted your television set volume to 0 so that we can hear you properly?
Removal of the subsidy on our petrol, and the second one is the unification of exchange rates.
Okay.
These are major economic decisions. The president took the bull by the horn. It's just like breaking coconuts with bare hand. And who are those who benefiting? The governors have more money. These efforts can actually be amplified if the governors are using the money maximally to create jobs, create construction, and ensure that the money is properly utilized in their various states. Agriculture is one of the most important things that we have neglected for a long time. If we can engage in production of agricultural products, both cash crop and edible crops, we will not be where we are. We must encourage agriculture. We must go back to our cocoa production. We must go back to our groundnut production. And even after producing them, we must actually add value by making sure that we are not exporting these crops raw like that. We must ensure that we add value in Nigeria by creating jobs with it. Then insecurity is another problem that we need to tackle. The enemies of the nation are always ensure that there is problem in food production area like Benue. Government should ensure that police is properly equipped, properly trained, and ensure that we take the bull by the horn. The police, the army, the DSS, we should all work together as one and ensure that the farmers are protected. That is another thing that can take out of it. Without production, Naira cannot get value. We are a consuming nation. We must be ready to produce, to add value to the Naira. In the situation whereby we have to import everything, it means that the Naira will continue to dance in the market without any value.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Durosimi, for calling in. Mr. Akinsiju, well, you heard it there. He touched on the themes, some of the themes that we had spoken about, and what would be your response? Because he also touched on something I was going to come to, which is that with the removal of subsidy, this has freed up a lot of funds that have now been channeled into the subnationals, aka the states, whether the states are now proceeding full gusto as a result of these extra funds that have come their way is another thing. In fact, there has been the criticism that stop talking to the center every time. Why don't you talk to beneficiaries of a lot more money than they ever had in terms of what Mr. Durosimi has just spoken about?
Yes, I agree. I agree with the perspective marshaled by Mr. Durosimi. And of course, there is a concern over what the subnationals are doing with the newfound higher quantum of fund available to them through the Federal Allocation and Accounts Committee. I also want to give the governors some benefits of doubt, because in the real sense of it, no matter how hefty the sum you could have, you cannot wave a major infrastructure asset, into existence. It has to take a process, and of course, some time for you to start to see the crystallization of roads. Even if it's a 15 kilometers road, it takes some time for you to see the crystallization. But what in the immediate we are seeing is that state governments are actually also paying off their debts, their state debts. The last we had was out of a possible total 5 trillion naira debt, secured by subnationals. About 1.6 or 1.7 trillion had been paid. That is an indication of commitment, of fiscal responsibility. And of course, it also shows that in truth, monies are being increased, sums of money are being allocated to the states, and they are doing something with it. Just like at the federal level too. So whereas before now, we were borrowing money to fund our subsidy appetite, now we are saving that money. We have higher money saved from that. We are also offsetting, loans, debts that have been secured in the past. So much that at the point in time, in value time, in dollar value, our sovereign debt that's the federal sovereign debt, was up to $108 billion, but now it has been reduced to $94 billion. We're talking of close to $13 billion under 18 months specifically. So it tells us that the policies as they are, either at the level of removal of subsidy or at the level of harmonization of foreign exchange, the subsidies are working. The policies are working. And they are not just working at the federal level, they are also working at the subnationals. But we can only continue to appeal to the governors, especially in the areas of agriculture, because they are the custodians of land. They should find a way of profitably, and commercially engaging this land in a way that they will produce more, especially now that by whatever means, because of the depreciation of the naira, there's a new opportunity for export, especially agri-processed export, for Nigerian products, Nigerian agricultural products everywhere in the West African region and beyond. We have seen the quantum leap in terms of exports products from Nigeria to West African region and beyond, to other African countries in the last 16 months. With the reason being that the naira, because of its depreciation, had made our locally domestic produced food or goods more cheaper. So our foods, our processed goods have become competitive, in that space. So whereas we had vessels come in, bring in imported commodities before into Nigeria, and you don't see those vessels taking out products, Nigerian products before. Now we see products coming and products going out. Okay. And of course, because of that depreciation of the currency, as it were, imports had also become expensive, and that's discouraging demand for import products. And because you are having, higher price for imported products, there is now a tendency for Nigerians to start looking inward. And because Nigerians are looking inwards for the products they used to buy as imported before, it's also incentivizing the local producers, local manufacturers to produce more, You know, so whatever the case may be, we are seeing a win-win situation, you know, for the economy and for the